Welcome to another edition of Just Ball. I'm here with PGC President and owner Mano Watsa, and he agreed to kind of come in and give us a brief breakdown of what PGC is all about. So talk about, because I got a chance to see you at a coach's clinic.
Yeah.
With your demonstrations, and it seemed to be something that you called the coaches out on. Is, you know, you had all those other college coaches that came in, some big names, some not so big names, and it seemed like they would go out and show drills, and then there wasn't a whole lot of coaching in the drill. It was just, here's what I want you to do it. And one thing that kind of caught me about, and I kind of leaned over and talked to one of my buddies about this, was before you mentioned it, I said, do you know what the difference between PGC's presentation and these other coaches' presentations were? And he said, I don't get what you're saying. What's that? And I said, PGC comes in and they don't just show you drills. They teach you how to coach the drills. They teach you how to teach players how to be better in these drills. That was one of the things I liked. And then the other thing I liked was the fact that you looked towards a leadership developer, and you wanted to develop that team concept. Even when you're bringing kids from all over the area into one gym and doing those multiple day clinics, you want them to learn to come together as a team and be leaders within themselves, not just for their teams, but self-motivational type leaders. Talk about those two things and what kids are going to get out of that in camps, and how they get that out of your camps.
Sure. We like to think that we teach flat out good basketball.
Sure.
What any coach just about anywhere wants their kids to learn, but quite often doesn't have time to teach.
Right.
Or doesn't know how to teach.
Sure.
You know, every coach wants their team to talk more, but what do you actually have your players say that becomes meaningful talk rather than chatter?
Right.
And so most coaches you hear in practices, we got to talk more, but they don't tell their players what to say.
Yes,
and
exactly.
So, or they want their players to make better decisions, but they don't teach them how to learn to read the defense so they can make better decisions. And so those are the types of things that we break down for players and for coaches as well. You know, we worked with over 5,000 coaches this year that attended our different programs, our courses, our coaching clinics, because they want to learn how to think the game and they want to learn how to teach more effectively. So even when I step into a coaching clinic, we don't just want to show them what we do. We want to teach them how we do what we do and why we do what we do, so that these coaches can take it back and be able to teach their players more effectively. So that's one in terms of the teaching. So at our summer sessions, it's rich with teaching. You know, we don't just roll out the balls and play. We follow a hear it, see it, do it model. They hear it in the classroom. And so we actually have classroom sessions 2 or 3 times a day. And most players think, classroom, last place I want to be in the summer is in the classroom. Right. But they're studying their favorite topic.
Yeah,
they're studying basketball.
If basketball would have been a class in high school, I would have been there every day.
And they're being opened up to new ideas of how to think about the game, how to think about how they play and how they compete and how they can be more effective on the court. Sure. So when most players realize, wow, that's what we're going to be spending our time focusing in on, and it's done in an interactive, even entertaining way, but it's colorful, creative, and engaging classroom sessions to help with the stickiness of what they're hearing and learning. And then they get to see it and see college and pro players using the things that we teach and failing to use the things that we teach. Sure. And then finally we get on the court and we do it. So they hear it, they see it, they do it. We don't just roll out the balls. They don't just run up and down the court and play games. You know, there's not a series of stations and then we say, all right, now let's go play. Because when you just have some stations and then you compete, well, what's to say that's going to transfer over to the skills that they worked on to the game situations? So you talked about what we did at the clinics in terms of teaching. We take players through a 3-part progression. So we teach it first, and they learn the skills or the habits. And then we show them how to apply them through what we call decision training. And that's where they're learning to read the defense. And so we're putting them in specific situations that are going to help their basketball IQ. And then we put them into competing environments that have constraints around them, so that it's not just roll out the balls and let's see if they're successful. It's here's the competition, and it's narrow and it's focused, and they're attempting to use the habits that they've just been working on and the basketball IQ that they've been developing.
Sure.
And then ultimately we then take that competition and go into a broader competition in which they might be competing up and down the court,
Sure.
Or in the half court against other players.
So it's just starting small and then
And building.
slightly growing, building.
Everything builds, so everything has a progression to it, as opposed to just a drill here, and let's do a rebounding drill, and then a shooting drill, and now we're going to do a defensive drill, and now let's go scrimmage and hope those things all show up in the game, and they typically don't.
We get a lot of that. We get a lot of coaches that I can't tell you how many emails that we've gotten. Our different guys at ProShot getting coaches writing in saying, "Hey, what drill would you use to work on this, or what drill would you use to work on that?" And one of our biggest things that we like to quote on is, "It's not what drill you do, it's what you do in the drill." And I think some of them take it different ways, and that can be used on multiple levels, as far as it's not what drills you do, it's what you do in the drill, in that it's what the players are doing, and it's also what the coaches are doing in the drill. They have to be engaged. Have to be engaged. They can't just, we say it all the time, when your kids are doing shooting drills, don't use that as a time to go meet with your coaches or go get a drink. That you should be right there on the floor, engaged with your kids, teaching them, hey, here's something that I see you doing. Let's try something else and see if it's going to help you.
And we, at our sessions with our instructors and our directors, we talk about peppering the air with reminders and encouragement.
Sure.
And so if they're working with a group of athletes at a group of players at a basket, we teach our instructors how to have an eye for what is a player doing well that you can celebrate and encourage and reinforce, and what do they need to improve upon that you can give them reminders of to focus on. We don't focus on past behavior and what didn't work well. We focus on what can they change going forward to influence their next action. And so it's constantly giving reminders and encouragement. And so I think the coaches coaching at the youth level, at the developmental level, even at the competitive level, Matt, have to be great teachers. So how do you become a better teacher? As you said, they can't be just standing talking to the other coaches on the sideline. It's being engaged, and so we think of it as peppering the air. And one of the things we miss as coaches quite often is peppering the air with positives, with reminders and encouragement.